And so the final speech this evening leads in his little introduction. Here he is, the best man, Mr. Neil Thornton.
Thanks, R. Mark. Now, if you look at R. Mark's face, you'll see the same shocked, disapproving look that he had when we turned up at Birmingham train station for Stag Do. With 6 pints of Stella in our bellies, and Phil dressed up as a 10-year-old goalkeeper. R. Mark was very shocked. Now, Phil's top was so tight that you could see his ribcage through it. I won't tell you how tight his shorts were. I'll just say Joe's a very lucky girl. Now, talking of goalkeeping, as we saw on the photos, Phil started off his footballing career at a very early age of 6. When still in Beavers, he was selected to play for the club football team. And everybody else was at least 1 or 2 years older than him, but he more than held his own. He was a very good player. Now, I'm still convinced to this day that the only reason why Phil carried on being a goalkeeper for so long during Cubs is for every clean sheet that he kept on a Saturday morning, our Kayla gave him a special little treat on the Wednesday night at Cubs. Now, it sounds a bit shocking that, but it was only a Mars bar. As Phil got older, he developed himself into a quite a good holding midfielder, and he's always one of the best players on the pitch. And speaking to previous managers, he was described as a 100%er. Now, I didn't have to go very far to find these previous managers, because one was my dad, and the other one was Phil's dad. And Phil ended his footballing career was right back at Preston College. The pinnacle being when they won the President's Day Tournament trophy in Arizona, America, which was no mean feat as they were the only British team involved in the competition. Now, Phil's obsession with football didn't stop with only playing football. Watching was just as important as well. And in true Phil style, he did take it a little bit too far when he decided to watch every single game of the '94 World Cup, even though England weren't playing. And the game where he took it a little bit too far was he had a GCSE woodwork exam the following day. He still stayed up the night before till 3 AM and watched the goalless draw between Spain and South Korea. Which goes a long way to explain why I have to do all this DIY work. Now, it's fair to say Phil was a naughty child at school, so was I. And as a 7-year-old, posing for the end of school picture, end of term picture, Phil decided to pull a funny face. How the photographer didn't spot it, I'll never know. He tilted his head at a 45-degree angle, crossed his eyes, and pulled a big cheesy grin. That was the first and only time in broad primary school history that parents refused to buy. It's a completely true story. I still have that picture, it was fantastic. By our last year of primary school, the headmaster considers that we were out of control. So he introduced a system that if you were naughty, you got a verbal warning, you had to stand outside his office for break time or for lunchtime. And if you had 3 of these verbal warnings, your parents would receive a letter. After the first week of this system being introduced, Janet Anderson had to go in to It's true. My mum had to go in the week after. That's also true. It was, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back was when we created Goshenge and played Spit Tig instead of Normal Tig. We were naughty kids. Now, high school was mainly uneventful for Phil. He just played a lot of sport and did just enough schoolwork to get by. The only memorable thing I can remember him doing was he was heavily involved in a teacher being locked in a cupboard for an entire lesson. And Mr. Floppy, as he was known to all the pupils, retired soon after due to that incident. There's good stuff later. It's not all bad. We were just bad kids. Now, whilst at college, Phil ventured out into the world of part-time work for the first time with fellow students Sam McGrath and Mr. John Bolton over there. Now, it was fair to say that they didn't take their jobs as waiters very seriously. And I don't want to give today's servers any ideas about future weddings, but the three friends decided to create a few games to make the shifts go a little bit quicker. And this happened at some poor soul's wedding, more often than not. Now, Phil reintroduced his photographic, well, ruining photos basically. He would stand at one end of an official photo, looking miserable, and Sam or John would look overly excited at the other side of the picture.
It's not about me.
Another one was the wedding cake. It was common practice to put a thumbprint in the wedding cake if you could. Maybe poke your finger through the bottom. But my personal favourite was when they were serving around the side dishes and vegetables, intentionally spilling food on people. And bonus points were awarded for staining the bride's dress. I promise you it gets better. It was around this time that Phil discovered alcohol and gambling. And I could spend the next 10 minutes describing many nights out, including the dusty mug, taxi jumps, throwing snowballs in April, and giving police false names. But I'm not going to do that because obviously it's not gone down too well so far. So I think we'll leave it at that. You won't believe the stories I've left out. Now, before I move on to the nice stuff, I'm just going to quickly mention the stag do. Now, I'm not sure if most of you know this, but there's a canal in Birmingham. And as we were walking from one pub to the next, we noticed that one part of it was a bit narrow. It looked about 6 foot wide. And probably 10 years ago, when all this mischief happened, me and Phil would probably have just jumped straight over. But we thought, no, now we've grown up a bit, we're a bit more mature, we'll do a practice jump down the side of the canal. So I went first, and I must have jumped about 2 feet. And our Mark immediately ruled me out and said, there's no way you're jumping out that canal. So Phil took a ridiculously long run up, must have been the length of the room, tripped over both his feet, smashed his knee into the ground, and our Mark said, you're definitely not jumping. And then we turned round, and to our amazement, Paul Connery, or Chris the Barge, as he's now known to his friends, was eyeing it up. And he had John Bolton in his ear, giving him encouragement. And it all happened in slow motion. It was amazing. We couldn't get to him soon enough to tell him not to jump, and he went for it. And he cleared it by about 3 millimetres. And as he landed like a sheet of paper.
Go on, Paul Connery.
And not a single drop of water landed on him. It was fantastic. Now, like I said, Phil started maturing probably when he started working at Gold Medal. And it was there that he met and fell in love with a lovely job. Ignoring the only solid bit of advice I've ever given to him about women. Never go out with a woman with shorter hair than yourself. Now, it's true, man. I actually say that. A week before he started going out with Joe, and he completely ignored. And long gone were the days of mischief and mayhem, and Phil decided to settle down and build a career for himself. Now, he started off on normal reservations, he moved to groups, then he became groups team leader, and eventually he started running the resource and planning department as a manager. And he was very surprised as to how he got this job, because at the time he had no qualifications to do it. So he went up to the guy who appointed him and he said, why have you picked me? Why have I beat all the other candidates? And he said, Phil, anybody that can get John Lawson to work on time every day for 5 years has exceptional planning skills.
Okay, I'll second that. I will film that. High five.
Now this started Phil's next love affair of planning, whether it be sick rotas or working out the perfect rota. Phil loves planning people's lives and working out the shifts. And now that he works the Professional Planning Forum, within his first year he's already won the Hero Award for 2011. At the planning Oscar ceremony, I made that bit up. But recognition doesn't stop there. In a recent issue of the Call Centre Focus magazine, or the CCF, as our subscribers know, Phil was named on the Who's Hot in Planning for 2011.
Joe, did you know about this?
Or the hot list, as our subscribers like to call it. Now, in his personal life, Phil decided to take on a pretty big task, which was the upkeep and maintenance of Joe. Now, after many years of watching Phil struggle to mould Joe into the ideal wife, I was curious as to how this relationship was working. So Joe doesn't do any cooking, any cleaning, never does the washing up, and is worse than the Queen for carrying money.
I have to do it.
So I said to Phil, what does Joe bring to this relationship, what's she good at? And he just gave me a little wink and he said, mind your own business, son. But seriously, I think Joe's going to make a fantastic wife, and they do make a fantastic couple, and Joe does look very stunning today. Really nice. But Joe does understand the art of compromise. Phil and I occasionally go for one pint after work on a Friday.
My arse.
And very occasionally, Phil gets in at 11:30 at night. And a good night. And Phil seems to get a lot less earache in the morning than I do off mine. Seriously, Phil's a great friend of mine, and I'm honoured to be his best man today. And I'm even more honoured that he's the godfather of my child, who does a fantastic job. So I hope you have a long and happy life together. So if you'd all like to stand and raise your glasses and toast to the new Mr. and Mrs. Anderson.
Well done, Neil.
And that's it. Cheers.